prayer. Dear Father, many of our thoughts and prayers are focused on the new year, a new beginning, new goals, new opportunities to serve and worship. We look to you for guidance, both for our church and our individual paths chosen. We pray for healing and comfort for those who are suffering, and may we feel your presence surrounding, may they feel your presence surrounding them. We pray for David today as he reviews the conclave. Please open our ears to hear and understand. In Christ's name, amen. I don't have to ask if everybody's enjoying the carrot cake. It's obvious. We're close to just clearing it out altogether, so this is really good. And thanks to Nancy and Donna and ladies, you did a great job with the choice today. Thank you very much. While we're talking about refreshments, Suzanne West, who is at home with a broken foot in a boot, and it is her driving foot, of course. She has signed up for refreshments next month. She's still, in 3 weeks, she goes back to the doctor. She has not been promised they'll take the boot off. There's some question about the bone healing. She feels she can still do refreshments, but we need one backup person. She even knows what she's gonna bring. And I just would feel better, I think Jane and I both would, if we knew there was one person that's a backup to help with her. So, thank you, Jane, appreciate it. And I'll pass that word along to her, and that'll just make her feel better, I'm sure. While we're talking about Suzanne, I need to make an appeal. She has asked me, and I said, is it all right if I share with the group? She's very concerned because, as you know, Morgan also is out of the library right now. She's sitting at home perfectly able to do everything. She just can't drive her car to get here. She does not know. She knows several of you have lived near her in the past, but she doesn't know anybody that does now. If there's anybody that would be coming to the church that lives out, would you do that?
Yes. Yeah.
That would be wonderful. She's almost willing to come anytime. She's very concerned about her library. And one of her main concerns is return books, might be literature circle books. And she's worried that they're sitting in the bin. And I checked. There were no literature books in the bin. I checked for her, and I promised to call her afterwards and let her know what's in there and what's to be done. She and Morgan are talking, and there's a young man that they think is going to be able to help out in the library. So that would be a really good thing, and certainly ease her mind a little bit. But anyway, I will pass that along. Thank you very much. And so let's all remember her too. Like I say, she goes back to the doctor in 3 weeks to find out how it's doing. And yeah, she was at a evening, like a botanical garden in the holidays, visiting her daughter, and they had flagstones to walk on, and it was in the dark, and she didn't make it up or down over the flagstones, so that's what happened there. Let's just move right on to David Peeples, who we are very honored to have with us, a first-time reviewer, and that's always good, but not a first-time person for us to know, that's for sure. David did receive his undergraduate degree from Austin College and his law degree from the University of Texas. He became a state court judge in 1981, and he continued that for 36 years. And even though he is retired, he still is taking on special cases by assignment, so which he does occasionally. I don't know how often, but enough that, you know, he's still in the game. He and Emily have been covenant partners since 1977. David tells me he has served several terms on session, and he has taught classes at all levels. That's from toddlers all the way to adult. So without further ado, and I will be passing out some papers for David. One last thing, ladies' night out, the cards are on the table back there. It's the 27th. Please pick up the card, and make the reservation. All the details are on there, so thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace, very much. She has some handouts that I want you to look at. It'll help you follow on this. Grace, how much time, what's the ideal amount of time for me to speak
Whatever you
and
need.
for questions?
Whatever you need.
30 minutes?
Oh, yeah.
What's
30's
your-
fine.
An hour.
Whatever you
You
need.
can have an hour.
Okay, have an hour? Okay, I don't have to hurry. Okay, good.
No, you don't.
You know, I want to tell you a kind of funny story about teaching kids. And I did teach toddlers all the way through adults and so forth. And I was, with toddlers, I was always backup. Somebody else was the lead teacher, and I was there for boy control. And I would get down on the floor with the boys, take my coat off, use my time to play with them, and teach them to share and all that. And we blocked and trapped and played on the floor. Anyway, so one of the fathers told me one Sunday, he said, "Let me tell you what happened last week. I picked up little Johnny and we were walking up to the car, and I said, what y'all doing in class today? Did you have a story?" "Yeah, we had a story." "What was the story about?" "About Jesus." "What else did you do?" "Oh, we played, had a snack." "Okay, what else? Who are your teachers?" "Well, Miss Taylor and Marty Taylor. Miss Taylor is my teacher." And the dad waited for him to say, "Did anybody else your teacher?" "No." "What about Mr. Peeples? Isn't he your teacher?" And the kid said, "Mr. Peeples, he's in the class." I just cracked up when I heard that. Let me start about why am I here instead of someone else. I didn't grow up Roman Catholic. I do not have a lot of Catholic friends here in San Antonio. I did teach a class on church history. Do I need to?
Yeah,
Okay, if I stand in front of this, is that better?
that's better.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah. Taught a class, and Christian history is a lot about the Roman Catholic Church, as you know, and so I think that's why Shelley asked me to do this. But anyway, now that I've done it, I'm so glad, and I appreciate being asked. Let me start with a question. I'm going to ask you about who's read the book and who's seen the movie. So who has, raise your hand, I just get a feel for this. Who has both read the book and seen the movie Conclave? Raise your hand. Maybe 10 people. And how many of you read the book only? Okay. And how many of you seen the movie only? Wow, okay. And I'm not going to ask if anybody's done neither, but I'm not worried about spoiling it except for a few of you. Does everybody have the handout?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm pretty sure I got an extra one. Where are they? Is that okay?
Okay, no, I got more.
I want you to look at the, I found that it was hard to keep up with things if you wanted to just read through the book or go through the movie. Because they're talking about the secretary for this and the director of so-and-so, and it's just hard to know who is what. So let's just start out, and I'm going to give you some facts about the conclave and the selection of the Pope generally now, and then what they say in the book, and then I want to outline the 6 major characters so you can keep track of those. Pope Paul VI in 1970, you can see that, decreed that once cardinals reach the age of 80, they can no longer participate in the conclave. In other words, 80 plus, and on your 80th birthday, you cannot go there and participate and be part of the discussions and vote. Only younger than 80 cardinals can do that. And in 2025, this is what the internet told me yesterday, the number of under 80 cardinals was 135 out of 252. You know, it's roughly half. But 135. Pope Francis, this was interesting. The Pope who died just a year ago had named 108 of the 135 at the time of the vote. 108 out of 135 in 2025. And in the book, in the movie, there are 118 cardinal electors. And most of the book and the movie deal with these 6 cardinal electors. All these names here got votes in the book and the movie. And let me just say, Emily and I saw the movie, a year ago, a year and a half ago, a while back. And then I read the book, and then when I saw the movie again, just to see. And I found that I thought that the movie was very faithful to the book, mostly, not completely. Just one little change. The dean who presided over these deliberations and so forth in the book, his name was Lonely, and he changed his name to Lawrence in the movie. But that's the only thing. The rest of them have the same names and all the same functions and all that. Let's go through them. I've got them 1 through 6, and the reason I did it this way is the first 3 are the 3 who start out getting the most votes. Adeyemi, Tremblay, and Tedesco. I've got the countries that they're from, and we'll go over what the positions they held. Lonely, and now his name is Lawrence in the movie, and I'm going to call him the dean. That's just an easy way to do it. But the dean, he was chosen by the Pope to be in charge of the cardinals and in charge of the conclave and to manage it and direct it and just to make sure things happen, just sort of the director of it. Very important. And he, of all the people in the book, I think in the movie, I thought he was the most exemplary and had the highest character and was the most God-oriented. I just thought he stood out as a person. Everybody else, all of us were flawed in some way, of course. But I thought that the dean stood out among these. There's something wrong with all of them. Now, Benitez, he's the one, just a spoiler, he's going to be elected Pope. This is the guy who wasn't even publicly named as a cardinal and who has a masculine femininity problem. They find out at the end after he's elected. But he's a good person too. The other 4 have some problems. But I've got them in order just so you can keep them straight. Adeyemi is black. He's from Nigeria. And there are a lot of people who think, oh gosh, it would be great to have the first black pope. That sends such a good message. But there are problems with him. Tremblay from Canada turns out to be very flawed. But he is an impressive guy. All of these are office holders. Every single one of these persons, except for Benitez, is an office. And the first 5 are holding high office by appointment of the Pope who just died. And so they are the best of the best. They're high-ranking cardinals. Tremblay, let's see, Adeyemi, the major penitentiary, whatever that means, but he's the confessor-in-chief. The book defines that office in that way. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but he was a high office holder from Africa, Nigeria. Tremblay was the chamberlain, and I looked that up. That's an official in charge of the Pope's living quarters. He also held this office as prefect. That's just a high muckety-muck of the Congregation for the Evangelization of Peeples. And we're going to find out how he used that office for his own benefit a little bit later, and that brings him down. Tedesco, I take back, Tedesco is not holding office. He's one who's not holding office. I take that back about him. But he's a contender because he's from Italy, and he stands out as a traditionalist and a conservative. And there's a faction that wants him. And he's been a fierce, open critic of the Pope who just died. I mean, he tangled with him and was in his face about a lot of things, and he made a lot of people mad for that reason. Lonely, Lawrence in the movie is the dean of the College of Cardinals, and the dean presides over the conclave and just manages the election. And as I say, he stands out as having the fewest flaws of anybody in the book, in my opinion. Benitez is right up there too. Bellini is the big liberal. He's a Secretary of State. And that's a quote from the book on page 16 here. He's the great intellectual hope of the liberals. Bellini from Italy. And then Benitez shows up late. I mean, he barely gets in. And he was appointed by the Pope to the office of cardinal. He went from missionary to cardinal very quickly, and because the Pope singled him out. And he's one who has problems, but he's going to be the survivor, and there's going to be good reasons why they elect him. I've got some other statements and that kind of thing. I don't know if we'll get to those, but I want you to keep that before you because I want to be able to talk about these people using their names, and I want you to be able to see who they are. But they're going to, in order, they're going to take 8 votes. The 8th vote is going to produce the, by the way, the reviewers usually don't just tell you the whole thing about the book, but I thought I would. Because this is a special kind of review. Anyway, the first 3 are they are the vote leaders in that order, basically. And the first vote, there's 6 people who get more than 1 vote. These, I'm not sure Benitez is one of them, but about 30 of the cardinal electors get 1 vote. They're just in the category of others, but these ones that are first 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, they're the ones that get more than 1 vote on the first vote. And of course, it's between them, from there on out, Benitez comes in at the end. Now, let me just talk about some other aspects of this. When someone writes a work of nonfiction, not science fiction, and not a real book about the world, but when it writes fiction, what are they trying to do? And let's talk about that. First of all, they might be trying to make money, okay? And some of them have been very successful about that. But that may be their reason, is just to write something and will sell. But I'm just going to list a few things and I want to get your ideas about it. Usually, they're going to have some world view or some view about how the world works that they want to portray. And I would say that's certainly on the minds of a lot of authors. And I heard a lecture from a literature professor just not too long ago who was talking about the Iliad and the Odyssey, written by Homer. And he just really opened my mind to, it was not just about who was a good warrior, but Homer made some of these characters be exemplary. They were concerned for their family. They were people of kindness and honorable. And there's one of them, his son is killed. He goes to the leader of the people who killed him and just begs to have the body back. And they show kindness. There's some of those good character people. And so one thing authors want to do is to show this is an exemplary person. This is a bad person. This is an evil person. And so there's that kind of thing, character development. And then there's that in this book, of course. They want to show this is the author's view of how the world works, how a conclave works. And, secrecy. It is secret. That's true. This book shows that. And that's real. That's accurate. And they close the doors and they got to give up your cell phone and your laptop computer, and you can't get any newspaper. You can't communicate with the outside world. They want it to be secret and not influenced by the outside world. That's true. From all we know, that is true. So authors have these kinds of things that they want to, the reason they write a book, other than to make money. What are some other reasons? Let's just talk just a moment about other things that I'm not mentioning right now. That would be a reason somebody would write a book of fiction. Just anybody.
Yeah.
Yes.
They want to join the fray.
Yeah, but to see what, just to get their view of right and
From a
wrong.
particular side.
Yeah.
Or point of view.
Yeah.
They want to get their 2 cents worth published.
I want to make a point of my point of view about politics or truth, religion, or whatever. Yeah. So there's certainly that.
Something else, particularly political books like Washington D.C., they don't want to be sued. So even though they write a book that's all about Washington D.C., they'll say non-fiction. They'll say fiction because they don't want to be sued.
We can tell who they're talking about, but not by name.
Exactly.
They want to out that, yeah, that's a good point. What else? Just other things that I'm not, yes.
I think they could just been intrigued by this process and wanted to look it up and then thought, oh, I'm kind of play with this in order to tell this story.
Anything else before let me just talk about what Robert Harris says he did. First of all, in the front of the book, of this paperback, there's a true map of the Vatican. And I didn't look it up, but I'm sure this is either came from the Vatican itself or from some map maker, but it's true, and it just gives the appearance of, folks, this is a true map of everything. I want you to know exactly where they were in the Sistine Chapel and where they ate their meals and so forth, where they slept, because this is real. And I think having this true map is just one way the author is putting it out there. I'm telling the truth here. This is a book that's how it is. Also, at the very end, he tells you, he tells us, I talked with several prominent Catholics. I had a tour of the Vatican. They were kind enough to show me around. I talked to a cardinal who'd been in a conclave place, one cardinal who'd actually been there. And then he lists, by my count, 16 books by about probably 10 or 11 people about the Catholic Church. And so he did some research. And I have no doubt that as a description of the mechanics of the conclave, this is pretty accurate, and it does come alive. The one thing, I do think that the ideas that he puts into people's heads that they're thinking and that they express, I'm not sure how he really knows that. And let me give you some examples about that. Background for what I'm about to say, there's a lot of criticism of Christianity and formal religion these days, institutional religion, churches. And some of it's hostile, some of it's just critical, and they criticize our rigidity and our piety and just maybe the truth of the faith. But there's a lot of criticism, and it's easy to think that this is there's some of that here. Let me just read you a few things. In the first chapter, I'm going to go to page 12. These are thoughts that he puts in the heads of people. And I guarantee you, he only talked to one person who'd ever been there, and I doubt that anybody has really revealed truthfully what was in the heads of these 118 or 135, whatever the number of cardinals elected was here. This is Tremblay. Now, Tremblay's going to get a lot of votes. He's going to get taken down, but he's going to get a lot of votes. This is like 2 a.m. when they discovered that the Pope died, and he's still lying in his bed. Despite the hour, Tremblay's appearance was fresh and handsome. His thick silver hair immaculately coiffed, his body trim and carried lightly. He looked like a retired athlete who had transitioned to be a sports newscaster. He pressed his hands together piously when he gave a document back and said something to someone. No, it wasn't praying, but he put his hands together, pressed his hands together piously as if in prayer. And then the dean says, the man was insufferable. I'm sure people have that kind of thoughts and so forth, but you just get the impression that it's in the book. He's got this nice map, and it's all true. Cardinal Adeyemi. Now he's going to lead the vote after the first vote. Cardinal Adeyemi came up behind the dean and began reading over his shoulder. That's fine. The Nigerian, all this is everything in here, unless it's in quotes from one of these characters, is the dean talking. The dean is a narrator and it's told from his point of view. The dean says, the Nigerian always smelled strongly of cologne. It's just an unfavorable thing to say about and people like that. That's probably true of all these real cardinals that are really real. Adeyemi's finished reading the timeline. He took off his gold-framed glasses, and sucked on the stem. And then there was a careful, theatrical manner to his movements. Still talking about Adeyemi in Nigeria. Theatrical manner to his movements. He always conscious of his dignity, a true prince of the church. Just little digs like this, it seems to me.
Yeah.
I find it unnecessary. That you've got to develop your characters, but it just seems to me gratuitous. And then, this is on page 16, we're in the first chapter. Later, the dean would look back on this, all this discussion, as the moment when the contest for the succession began. Not the process for the discussion, for the succession, the contest. It's a contest. And one of these characters later on says, the dean and Bellini, the liberal, are talking. And Bellini, the Italian liberal, says something, and the dean says, it's this is a discussion among colleagues, it's not war. And the lady says, it is war. This is war. This discussion, Holy Spirit, anyway, the contest session has begun. And then Tremblay again. From the inside his cassock, Tremblay took out what appeared to be a prayer book, bound in black leather, which turned out to be a mobile phone. He's got carries a cell phone around looking like a Bible or a prayer book. Just a gratuitous thing in fiction. And at the end of this chapter, 22 pages, first chapter, there's a discussion about the dean and the pope who died maybe having lost their faith. Faith in God? No. Didn't lose their faith in God, faith in the church. And they're talking about the curia. And let me just, I looked it up, and on page 41, there's a discussion of what the curia is. And I had a Catholic friend who was out at St. Mary's, a great scholar. We talked one time, and I asked him what the curia was. And he says it's kind of like the bureaucracy or the cabinet is like that. And this is what Harris says about the curia. At that time, the 24 members of the curia who lived permanently in Rome and who ran the big departments of the church. And that's the best definition of curia that I've seen is the officials appointed by the Pope. And you're not bringing in somebody that's been there for a year. These are prominent people given big offices, but there are 24 in this book, and they live in Rome, and they're sort of the establishment. And there's some suspicion of the curia, and there's this thought is put at the very end of the first chapter that the Pope who just died and the dean, who's the standout person in this book, were having a crisis of faith, not in belief in God or that kind of thing, or the theology, but the confidence in the curia and the institutional church. That they had sort of had a crisis of faith about that. The dean watches as people show up. They've got to get there on time or the doors are going to be closed. And of course, Peeples comes in last. But this is just another way that the idea that the legitimate idea that all of these cardinals are human. No question about that. And they're not saints. They're human like us. They're very well educated, and they've risen largely by merit these days. But anyway, he's done his homework. He's had a briefing book, and he's got resumes and so forth about all these cardinal electors who are showing up. He's got pictures of them, so he sees them coming, he recognizes, and he speculates. I'm not going to read from the book, but it's just his thoughts going through his mind. These are all from Spanish-speaking countries, and they're all arriving at the same time. I'll bet they went to lunch together and probably getting their thoughts together about who they ought to support, what they ought to do. And here come the people. This is the people, the English-speaking people, and they probably do the same thing. And these are the ones from Africa. They're going to be for IDM. So his thoughts going through his mind is all going to be about politics, or about some hardball activities. I'm going to read a little bit from page 77. This is a discussion of Bellini. If you look, he's number 5. He's the great intellectual hope of the liberals, and he's a smart guy, but he doesn't get very many votes. And he's philosophical about it. He says, votes aren't there, I'm fine with everything. If they want me, I'll do it. But anyway, this is his supporters. And somewhere in the book, the author says, so-and-so was the closest thing Bellini had to a campaign manager. Didn't have a campaign manager, but there were people who were working. They weren't just busy praying and just having discussions. They were counting votes, and you talk to him. So this is on page 77, and it's worth reading. This is the almost campaign manager for Bellini. He opened a small black notebook. Well, my friends, now I suggest we divide the task. Rocco, your English is the best. You talk to the ones from America and from Ireland and England. Who's good in Spanish? Somebody raise their hand. Yeah, good. You talk to people from South America. Of course, they're going to talk to them about Bellini, the person they're campaigning for. And then so-and-so, your job was this and that. You know, that means you had contact with the people in Africa. Would you be a good person to talk to the African cardinal electors? Yeah. And so they divide up the work that way. And it's politics and campaigning. And that's the part of the book talking about that. Late into closed the doors, and one of these officials, not a cardinal elector, but a bishop of some kind who's been involved in the Vatican, comes to the dean and says, I need to talk to you. And the dean says, there's no time. Is it important? Yes, it's important. We've got to talk. And so he finds time to talk to this guy. And he says, you need to know something about Tremblay, who's going to get a lot of votes. He's the guy from Canada, the tall, athletic looking with coiffed hair, and a cell phone in something that looks like a Bible. The Pope, before he died, told this guy, I'm dismissing you from all of your offices. He never got around to doing it in writing, but the Pope told me he did that to Tremblay. You need to know that. And the dean says, what are you going to do about it at this late hour? Kind of late. And so, but he files that away. And then he says this fellow Benitez, who just came in, he never was officially appointed as a cardinal. But we know that the Pope orally made him a cardinal, in pectore. You know, the pectoral muscles in the breast, I mean, that's in the handout here. But in pectore is Latin for in the chest or in the breast. And so it was done privately, really, and legally, but there's no record. But anyway, they decided, well, he's real. He's, the Pope promoted him way, quickly. And as you can see on the handout, he's from the Philippines, and Spanish is his language, best language. But he's been in Africa, and then to Iraq and Afghanistan. It was dangerous, and he dealt with street people and women that had been abused. And he wasn't from some prominent, luxurious place. He was on the streets person.
The Afghanistan, were they church assignments after he was already a bishop?
Well, they were regional assignments, not to an actual church, but he was a cardinal or a bishop. I'm not sure which. But the point is, he was in these different places. He's from the Philippines, but he did major work in Africa. And it may be that the movie talked about Afghanistan and the book talked about Iraq, Baghdad. It's sometimes hard to remember which was in the movie and the book, and I don't want to get distracted on it.
No, but it's amazing to think of Catholic communities
It is.
existing in places like Iraq.
It certainly is. It certainly is. And that's part of this fiction.
Yeah.
And the point that is made about Benitez is he didn't come from a wealthy place. He is a person who's been on the street with real people, with real problems. But the Pope believed in him and made him a cardinal in pectore, in the breast, not officially, but legally, but not publicly, and with a bunch of rigmarole and all that. And we know where Benitez is going to end up. At some point, the dean learns more about Tremblay. He knows there's an incident, and this has been, by the way, again, the book and the movie adds a little bit. There's no way the movie could say everything the book says. Certainly not what's going on in somebody's head. But I just thought, the second time I looked at the movie after reading the book, I thought, this is pretty faithful to the book. Can't be totally faithful. Change some things, change up the editing a little bit. But in both of them, the dean's dormitory room is right next to Adeyemi, the Nigerian. And he hears a discussion through the thin walls. Some woman and not supposed to be there, and Adeyemi are talking, and it's kind of an animated discussion. And finally, there's they have words, and here's the door shut, and by the time he gets to the door and tries to look and see who was there, he can see the backside of a nun going around the corner. He can't tell who it is, but he heard a female voice in there with Adiemi and saw a nun, and was obviously wearing nun clothing, going around the corner for 1 second. And so he knows that something has happened. And the next day, there's an incident in the lunchroom where they're having lunch. This black nun confronts the Nigerian cardinal elector, and there's dishes are broken and all that, and everybody notices it. And it's very embarrassing for Adiemi. And it turns out the dean does some investigation work and finds out that the cardinal had gotten this woman pregnant 30 years ago in Africa. And basically, the dean then tries to convince him, we know about forgiveness, and that's a long time ago, but we're going to let somebody poke, the microscope's going to be on this person we have, and we just can't have somebody with this in their background being the pope. It will not be good for the church. And Adiemi, as I recall, doesn't say, okay, I'll get out, but because there was this incident that everybody saw, he doesn't get very many votes the next time. So he's been taken down because of his confrontation with the black nun. The dean also finds out that Tremblay, the tall, beautiful gray hair, cell phone and Bible guy, has arranged for this black nun in Africa to be transferred to Rome. And then somehow she finds her way to make things embarrassing for Adiemi. One of his main competitors for the office of Pope. And so Tremblay has, behind the scenes, arranged to have this scene happen. Now, he couldn't orchestrate her going out there, but he got her into Rome, and somehow she was made, one of the people who was cooking food and all that kind of stuff. And she confronted him in his room, and then publicly the next day at lunch, and he didn't get a lot of votes after that. And there were 8 votes, and in the book, of course, if you read it, you see how the votes come out again and again, and they change. Adiemi was the leader first of all, and this happens to him, and he sinks. And Tremblay is the next high vote getter, but he's got problems too. The dean, the good guy, and I mean that sincerely, he's getting votes too, but he genuinely does not want it. And he's not just going through the motions on that. He genuinely doesn't think he's good enough, not cut out to be pope. Please don't vote for me and all that. He keeps getting votes. But he keeps finding out this information. And then there's a woman called Sister Agnes, who she's kind of the head nun. And she's there in the building. Of course, she's not part of the proceedings, but he goes to her and says, I want to find out about Tremblay. I know some stuff. And she said, I can't tell you that. Well, he just gets serious with her and won't take no for an answer. And so finally she goes down and opens up her computer and then steps aside and goes and looks. He finds an email where Tremblay had said, I want this black nun transferred to Rome. It's an email from him asking for it. So he's got proof. And he confronts Tremblay, and Tremblay says, I don't believe you. You don't have any proof on me. Nobody's going to believe you, and that kind of thing. And then the dean, there's an indication in the book that the Pope spoke to him, or maybe the Holy Spirit spoke to him, but anyway, he gets the idea of going into the Pope's apartment, which has been sealed off with wax, hot wax, and all that, and can't be broken into. And he's got a pass key because he got locked out of his apartment, and Sister Agnes gave him a pass key. So this can get him into the Pope's quarters, and so at night he goes in there and breaks the seal, and goes in, closes the door, and looks around. And by the way, I read the book and saw the movie and all this, and still it's hard for me to put all this together. You're smarter than I am, maybe you got it all. It was hard. But anyway, he goes in, and all he knows is that Tremblay arranged to take down Adiemi, one he got pregnant. And he he had tried to get Sister Agnes to tell him information of what else is there about Trinity Book, but she was tight-lipped about it. So he goes in and he looks around and this is different in the book and in the movie. But anyway, he finds in some of the furniture in the Pope's bedroom documents where the Pope had been suspicious about some of these people in the Curia and gotten the financial records on everybody, including the dean and including every one of these candidates. And Tremblay had like 4 times as much money as all the rest of them. He had a whole bunch more. And the book talks about how people give cash, to somebody that's working for the cardinal, they take the cash and whatever. They're not really good accounting about it. Cash is hard to trace and all that. But anyway, the Pope got a report, and it's titled Executive. There's the executive summary, but he's got the executive summary of report to the requested by the Holy Father, and it's dated the day the Pope died. In other words, he read it, but he never had a chance to do anything about it. But he had told this is full information that the dean gets on the day the thing starts. The Pope dismissed him from his offices. Why? I don't know why, but he did. He told somebody I dismissed that guy. But anyway, now the dean has gone into his apartment and looked around and just stumbled onto it and found paperwork showing bank records. And the conclusion in this executive summary, Tremblay has been giving money to people to purchase their votes at this conclave. That's just suspicion. And there's no, as I understand, no evidence that there really was a bargain for deal. But he certainly spread the money around and was hoping these people would be friendly to him. And the Pope found out about it and told him to his face, I'm removing you right now at this moment from all these offices you hold. But he died before he could put it right. But anyway, the dean knows about it, and he takes those and takes them down to Sister Agnes, and you get the impression that she is secretly sympathetic to what he's doing. And she knows he's in charge of things, but she's bound to secrecy, but she knows that there's fraud and skullduggery to be discovered, and he's onto it, and so she helps him. And she tells him how to work the Xerox machine, how to make copies, how to redact names and that kind of thing. And so she says, how many copies do you need? He says, 118. So we know what he's going to do with the copies of the executive summary that show Tremblay, the Pope, took his offices away from him because he was paying all these people and shouldn't have been, and the records show it. There were several pages, and anyway, he and Sister Agnes put that in everybody's chair the next day, and when they get there, everybody reads it. Tremblay doesn't get many votes in the next election. So, Adeyemi and Tremblay have tumbled. You can see they're number 1, number 2, and they've gotten, not to the requisite 2/3, they've been the highest vote getters until now. But now they've both been taken down. And at about this point, they're getting ready to meet, and there's an explosion, and glass breaks, and as it turns out, a car bomb has been sent to the Vatican, tried to explode it, and broke a bunch of glass windows in the Sistine Chapel, the glass tumbles down, and then there's another explosion out there, which turns out to be a suicide bomber, and as it turns out, there's in Munich, Germany, something like that's happening, and somewhere in Belgium, and somewhere else, and it's happening all over Europe, but they don't know about it because everything's cut off. And the dean finds out from somebody who's got access to the news what has happened, and he calls the 118 together. One of them, of course, says, we're supposed to not know what's going on outside, but I think that it might be important for us to know what's going on outside. And some people say yes, some people say no. He said, let's just put it to a vote. And most of the people say, we want to know what's happening out there. And the dean says, anybody who wants to close their ears, you can leave and not listen to it, nobody leaves. And he tells them about this, and several witnesses said that some of the explosions happened when someone said, Allahu Akbar, well, it's a Muslim coordinated attack all over Europe. And so then they had a discussion about it. And Tedesco now, he's number 3. He got the most votes in the last vote, time they voted, which was maybe the 5th or 6th vote. Adeyemi and Tremblay, they've been damaged, and so they don't get votes anymore, and Tedesco is leading it. But all of these insiders don't like Tedesco because he's against everything they're for. He's too conservative and too traditionalist. And if we have time, I want to read some of the things that, let's do it right now. Look on the back side of this. Number 4, but actually number 3. I'm going to digress. We'll get back to the votes and how Benitez gets chosen. And what you're all waiting to hear about, which is his condition. But Tedesco, the issues, number 3, that Bellini talks about are liturgy and the Mass in Latin or in the vernacular, that is English, German, whatever language that people understand, birth control, ecumenism, reaching out to other faiths, toleration of differences, different faiths, different theological positions, more democracy for bishops, in other words, give bishops more power, for women in the church. These are some issues that Tedesco, he wants to turn back the clock before Vatican II in the 1960s. In the 1960s, Pope John XXIII was a breath of fresh air. He only reigned as Pope for 5 years, but he did every one of these, almost, that Tedesco was against. But anyway, Bellini, he's the liberal. He's number 5, I think. Yeah, 5. He never has gotten traction. He never gets very many votes. And he's the one that says that this is a war we're engaged in here in this conclave. But at one point, he's talking to his supporters, and he says, I'm not going to campaign. I'm not going to seek this. And then one of his supporters says, well, then what would you have us tell people about what you believe? We can be a surrogate for you. We'll go out there and talk for you. What do you want to say? And then Bellini says, and I'm going to read it, the answer. And this is either quotes or it's almost a quotation from the book. He says, I tell them that I stand for everything Tedesco is against. We're never returning to the days of the Latin liturgy. Priests celebrating the Mass with their backs to the congregation. Think about that. You all are the congregation, the priest does everything with his back to you. That was a big change in the 1960s with Vatican II. But Tedesco's against that, and excuse me. We're never returning to Latin liturgy and priests turning their backs on the congregation. Families of 10 children because Mama and Papa know no better. It was an ugly and repressive time. This is Bellini talking. He said, you all can go out and tell people this is what I'm doing. And we should be joyful that it has passed. Tell them I stand for respecting other faiths and for tolerating differing views within our own church. Tell them I believe bishops should have greater powers and that women should play more of a role within the curia. And at that point, they stop him and say, hold on. If you say that about giving women power in the curia, even though they won't be celebrating the Mass and things like that in churches, they'll be giving women power. And boy, the people are not ready for that. You'll lose if they think you're for that. So you can't tell them you're even for letting women hold office, even though you're for it. And finally he said, well, okay. And it is said later on that somebody says, but think about it. If as you suggest here, women can play more of a role and be part of the curia and hold a high office, administrative office, they can pick cardinals, but they can't even celebrate the Mass. Think about that. You're going to give them power to choose people and have all this power, but not the power to celebrate the Mass in a church. And so there's this discussion, and I don't think we have time to read through these, but I typed up the debates that they had, the dean gives a speech that's basically liberalism and tolerance, and on the next page, a 94-year-old cardinal who was sort of there to speak for the old folks that couldn't vote anymore, who got to make a vote, and he says, we need to be against all these isms. Anyway, there's a sort of that debate, and Harris, to his credit, has the debate in these words, and I think it's a fair statement of these 2 points of views. And then he's got Bellini, the liberal, summarizing what the conservatives are against and what he's for. So the book does talk about those things. Now, to finish, so there's been this attack on the Vatican and on Catholic churches in several places in Europe. And in the book, Benitez gets up and says, we got to be calm. Tedesco, the conservative, gets up, and in the movie, he really is angry. It doesn't come across that much in the book, I think. But Tedesco, the conservative, who's gotten a lot of votes, and who's in the last vote was the leader, he is so over the top and so angry, and so you just find yourself thinking, even if what he says makes some sense, the Pope shouldn't be a person that is off the charts like that. And so he doesn't get many votes the next time they take it, because he spoke up so fervently and with such anger and shouting about the attack on the Vatican, the car bomb and all that. And so it comes down to the dean, who doesn't want it, and Benitez. The rest of them, Bellini, the liberal, he just never got traction. Never got more than 15 or 20 votes. Adiemi from Nigeria, he had the problem with the woman, and they just couldn't go with him. Trimley from Canada, he was a schemer and was probably paying money to people so they'd vote for him. But he wanted to scheme to have the black nun brought to Rome, and so he was toxic. And the dean, Lumley Lawrence, he doesn't want it. And so Benitez then, after the anger speech by Tedesco, gets to, now Benitez in the movie and in the book is he's not real macho. And he's, if you know that he's basically a woman and whatever, he's not a macho person, and he's got kind of a soft voice. And in the book, the nuns and everything, they've distributed sort of a doc kit for all the cardinals, the shaving and toothbrush and all that kind of stuff. Somebody noticed that Benitez never shaved. He never even opened the razor and shaving cream. What's going on? And so the dean starts wondering about that, and after he has won the vote, he gets 92 votes out of 118 or something. He's elected Pope. But before they announce it, the dean decides he's got to go have a discussion with Benitez. He doesn't know what he's going to do, but he's got to talk to him because he knows that the people know, and the close-knit people around the Pope know that Benitez wanted to go to Geneva, Switzerland, and have some surgery, but he backed out at the last minute. And the dean said, well, there's nothing wrong with going to a hospital in Switzerland. Oh, it's not a hospital, it's a clinic. What kind of clinic? Sex reassignment clinic. Oh, gosh. So Benitez had scheduled to go to a sexual reassignment clinic in Switzerland. He's been elected with 92 votes. 30 minutes before. It's done. And so the dean gets him up and said, we got to talk privately about this. And Benitez very persuasively says, I never went. You got to understand, I was poor. We were poor. And I never had boys to play with, and I just never knew whether it was a boy or a girl. And, you know, I went in for surgery, I had something done, and the surgeon told me that I had female equipment. And that's the first time I really knew about it. You know, then I understood what it was. And I decided to have something done about it. I changed my mind, and I ministered mainly to women and on my ministries, and this is the way God made me. And so the dean says, how many people know about this? Well, okay, there's me, and there's you, and there's this other fellow. Now, how about the doctor that did the surgery? Well, he that was in Baghdad, and he got killed in a car bombing incident, so he's dead. So it's the dean and Benitez, they're talking about it, and the fellow who had looked at the records, and the dean says, we'll sign an assignment for him. We'll make him an archbishop and put him off somewhere where he won't cause trouble. And he won't ever tell anybody. And the dean said, well, there's one more, there's three of us, or there's a fourth one. Who's that? And he says, God. And that's the way the book ends. I think, let's have discussion and questions.
Yeah.
I think that Harris, he did a lot of homework, a lot of investigation, and what else you could do if you want to write about something that's secret like that. You know, when Woodrow Wilson went over in 1918 to Versailles, representing the United States, he said, we want open covenants, openly arrived at. That's a quote from Woodrow Wilson. We're not going to have this behind the closed doors and stuff. We're going to be out in the open, transparency before it's time, open covenants, openly arrived at. And the Conclave process is the polar opposite of that. It's all secret. And so books like this are a good way to open our eyes to some understanding of it. As I think I made clear, I think it may show some hostility to put thoughts in people's heads that just show there's scheming, it's a war, this guy's insufferable, so-and-so's pompous, and, you know, and they're certainly human. We're all human. I think he sort of goes a little far on that. I'm not calling it a hit piece on the Roman Catholic Church, but when you put all of it together with the ending, it makes you so, thoughts and questions? Gates?
Like you, after reading the book and seeing the movie, I thought I'd better do a little research. So I went to the Catholic News Agency, and there I found an almost immediate response to the movie. I'm going to read a couple of quotes. Matthew Burson, who's the editorial director of the Catholic News Agency's parent company, said that in reality, the cardinals from around the world, even though they don't know each other, have a remarkable fraternity and collegiality as members of the College of Cardinals. He continued, if this had been a genuine film on an authentic Catholic conclave, that might have been truly historic and superb. Bishop Robert Barron, Diocese of Winona, Rochester, Minnesota, expressed a similar criticism. He said, if you're interested in a film about the Catholic Church that could have been written by the editorial board of the New York Times, this is your movie. And then Barron continued in this interview, Cardinal Benitez, who is strongly telegraphed as a papal candidate from the moment his character is introduced, says that he was made a cardinal in victoria, that is, in secret. But he offered no documentation and no proof. And yet the other cardinals embraced him immediately. In reality, Burson said, a cardinal created in pectore cannot take part in a conclave unless the Pope makes his name public prior to his passing. So, in conclusion, Barron says, right from the start, this character is ineligible because he should not have been a cardinal to begin with.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly how the discussion proceeds in the book where they satisfied themselves that the Pope really had done it. It seemed like he had told some people, and was there something in writing about it? I mean,
No, it was, he never announced it publicly. Yeah, and there never was any proof offered in the movie. They
Well,
just,
that's
and Barron said, in another part of the interview I didn't quote, this was a very quick election compared to the norm.
yeah, Pope Leo's was pretty quick, wasn't it? The one we just had? Week or two, several days, wasn't it? It was. Now, if you go back through history, there were times when they could never agree for a long, long time. On the collegiality part, I do think that there wasn't very much about the collegiality beyond these 6 people, and there are more people are mentioned, and there's one passage where, I don't remember where the cardinal was from, but he and the dean were joking with each other, and it was serious joking, and somebody said something about, gosh, was he disrespectful to you, to the dean, and they said, oh, we've been joking like that for years. So there's that kind of thing, but in terms of all 118 of them, I don't think that's in the book. Yeah, Nancy, do you have something?
Well, I just think it's kind of funny, ironic, that Catholic Church adverse to women taking more critical roles. This is all fiction. The Pope was a woman in this story. I mean, it's just all sort of coming together for me. It's almost, it's the author's commentary, perhaps, on that faction in the Catholic Church and other churches who are critical of women taking on those kind of roles. And here, the very Pope in this very fictionalized story was a woman with all the necessary.
We find out about that at the very end. By the way, and I don't want to psychoanalyze, the authors are entitled to take the point of view, but the Sister Agnes, there's a very good, she comes out, Tremblay and the dean are having an argument about, Tremblay says, look, you're just making this stuff up because you want to disqualify me so you can get all the votes and be the Pope. And Sister Agnes comes out and starts walking out there, and she's not supposed to be there. She walks out, gets the floor, and she basically says, look, the dean had good reasons for looking into Tremblay because he knew the fact that Tremblay had the black nun brought here so he could take down Addie Envy. And he had good reason to go looking in the Pope's apartment. And he wasn't just trying to find something about Tremblay. But that was a good appearance by a nun. And I thought she was a good character. Yeah, Ellen?
I love the character development and the fact that he told the story of the politics of electing a cardinal, much like politics of any election. I thought that was fascinating, particularly Tremblay and his whole character and the way, just such a character, right? And it just totally, I enjoyed it, but I also was thinking of the movie The Monsignor several years ago with Christopher Reeve. That was quite a revelation. Of course, a novel, right? But a story of the politics of the Catholic Church, particularly the Vatican, and its wealth, because there is a lot of money and it has to be managed.
Yeah. Well, there's probably a continuum between somebody wanting to show these are human people who,
Yeah.
they're imperfect.
Exactly.
There's something bad about everyone. On the other hand, to be raking in a whole bunch of money that ought to be used for church purposes
Yeah.
and to fund the people.
Tedesco, definitely,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that was Tremblay that did it.
Tremblay.
Yeah,
Trump, you're right, yeah.
And
The Canadian,
the,
yeah.
the liberal versus conservative differences of opinion, I think those are real.
Yeah.
And there are people, I'm sure, now after Pope Francis has replaced so many people, I don't know how many votes there would be for this, but to turn back the clock to before Vatican II,
Yes.
which would really take us way back. A lot of good was done then. And more hospitable relations with Protestants, for example, but a lot of things. Yeah, Gates again?
Yeah, I want to address, even though I'm not one officially, we're all theologians, but I'm not a professional theologian, quite obvious. But I want to address a theological question. It is true that in the book and in the movie, Benitez turns out to be a female person. And it occurs to me that Jesus is the bridegroom, the church is the bride. And so if Benitez actually is Pope fiction or not, you've got a woman and a woman in this theological marriage, which to me, in the background of the whole thing, is part and parcel of Harris's program. Because he's not only challenging the idea of what goes on in electing a pope, he's also addressing the issue of gender norms and the conflict that is worldwide currently about tolerance and acceptance and rights and all that goes with that. But the theological point stuck with me the most. Here you have a woman and a woman.
Interesting. The theological point, toward the end, Benitez does say a couple of times, I just decided not to change the way God made me. And he makes that point. And so that's a point that the author obviously wanted to make. It is a real stretch to have a female pope. Yeah, Emily?
I could be wrong, I didn't read the book, but I thought you said that in the book, one of the things he said was, it was a poor, and girls did not get ahead, it was a world for boys, and I was raised as a boy. My parents told me I was a boy, and that he had never had any reason to question that until he had this incident where there was a bombing and he had to, have a surgery, and the doctor was the one who discovered it, which makes me believe that there were things about him that were not totally female.
I'm not sure we know that from either the movie or the book.
Yeah.
And that is a surreal part of the book, the whole story. Yes. I've been looking over that way, and I don't miss this side of
I'm
the
not gonna open a can of worms. I know that.
I would say at the end of the movie when it just stopped, I'm like, it was such an abrupt ending, I was really, I don't know what's gonna happen after that, but that's the movie after that.
What else is there to say?
The ending was a big surprise. I also thought it was a big surprise, as it was for me, it would ended up with a Pope down that is an American.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, the fact that he spent so many years in Peru, that was 14, and he was almost a third world person
That's right.
because of that. That sure helped.
And during some very rough times, Ed Fuller, when he was there, this article that I mentioned to you that's in the current issue of the New Yorker about the making of Pope Leo. And the track that he followed is quite amazing. I mean, you can tell his ability was quite amazing. His administrative ability and everything. He was immediately seen as somebody who's destined to be, you know, a good executive person.
Who else?
Certainly a twist at the end. I think it,
More than quit.
all the readers with, of these questions and that are being asked and thought over.
Just one word about this handout. The dean had the privilege of giving a speech to the whole group before they voted. And he basically said, diversity is good. God made us different. If you wanted us all to be the same, you could have done that. He didn't. And we benefit from diversity and collective action and all that. And then the contrary view is given by this other fellow. And then Bellini sort of states his view, which is Vatican II was good and Tedesco must have turned back the clock to the 1950s. Just, I thought it was okay statements of those issues which are alive and on the Catholic Church. What else? Grace, I turn it over to you. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Dave. There's a lot to think about in that, and I particularly liked your bringing up about the whole thinking about what is an author writing for? What's her purpose? What were they trying to get across? I think that in this book is a particularly good question to answer. Reminder about next month, February the 10th. And our other change, I'm sure you all now have the list of the new schedule, but Gates will be doing The Cat Who Saved Books.
Yay.
So there you go. And Gates, we'll look forward to seeing you there, and all of you, please come back and find out about the cat. Very smart cat, I must say. Have a great month, take care and be healthy.
Yeah.